So, Madison Gesiotto is an attorney, television commentator, political strategist, and columnist for The Hill, who appears frequently on Fox News Channel, Fox Business Network, MSNBC, and CNN. I don't know what those last two are. I've seen it on Fox.
Fake news.
She served as the spokesperson for President Trump's inauguration and was a national surrogate throughout his 2016 campaign. She's a native of Madison, Ohio, and a 2017 graduate of the Moritz College of Law, where she served as a staff editor for the Ohio State Journal of Criminal Law. In addition to her television work and writing, Madison is a former athlete and beauty queen. In 2014, she captured the coveted title of Miss Ohio USA and represented Ohio on NBC in the 2014 Miss USA competition. She is currently serving on President Trump's 2020 Campaign Advisory Board and is co-chair for his Women's Coalition. She is also leading the Nonprofit and Business Formations Division of MMFL Law in Canton, Ohio, a full-service firm with a pro bono focus on representing battered women. So when I first met Madison was when my friend, and probably a lot of your friends, Mike Newbern, was running for the Ohio State House. And he said, "Hey Doug, come on down, we're doing a fundraiser, and Madison's going to be there." And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Well, it's a machine gun shoot." And I said, "I'm there." So if you tell me somebody, I get to go hang out with somebody at a machine gun shoot, I got to figure that they are on my side. So as far as I'm concerned, it's Machine Gun Madison, your friend and mine, and Fox News contributor Madison Gesiotto.
I'm a little disappointed Doug didn't bring the machine guns out for this event, but next year. So I'm so excited to be with all of you guys today in my home state, and I used to live in Columbus, so it's very special to be back in this area. I'm going to start out by telling you guys a little bit about myself, why I choose to conceal and carry, and kind of my background, and then I'm going to go into some fun political stats that I brought with me to share with you guys. I was actually with the president yesterday, so I had some good conversation with him, and I'll share a little bit of that as well. So 3 specific instances happened when I went to Ohio State. I grew up around guns. My dad's right back here. He's the reason why I know so much about guns, why I was around them my whole life. But as a young person at Ohio State, there were some instances that really opened my eyes to what we're facing, and why not only do I carry, but why I'm an advocate and a vocal supporter for the Second Amendment. So back when I was Miss Ohio, I started writing a column for the Washington Times, and one of the things I talked a lot about is gun-free zones. I like to call these victim target zones. These are areas where, as you all know, good people like you and I are especially vulnerable to attack. Because guess what? The criminals, they don't follow the laws. And so we see reactions, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, to situations, tragic situations and instances like we saw in El Paso and Dayton. It's a knee-jerk reaction from the left, where they say, we're going to make more laws to stop the criminals. Last time I checked, criminals don't follow the laws, so that's obviously not going to help. But my first situation was back in 2015, and some people may know this story. I think Chuck knows this story, but a lot of people don't. I was a law student at Ohio State, and one of my columns that I wrote was a pro-life column. The statistics for the column came straight from the CDC. It was actually probably one of my least opinionated columns that I ever wrote. It was abortion numbers showing these abortion rates are rising. They're rising in the Black community. They're rising to exorbitantly high numbers. Why is this? And what can we do to stop this? We don't want to see this. I mean, even for people who support abortion, do we want to see these numbers rising and rising and rising? I would say probably not. After I wrote that column, I had students at the school threaten to rape me so that I know what it's like to want an abortion. They said they were going to fight me. They took photos outside. 3 men, 10 years older than me, said they would fight me. Now, keep in mind, it's a gun-free zone. I can't carry it on Ohio State's campus. I can't legally protect myself. So I went to the administration of the law school at Moritz, and I said, here's what's going on. I don't know these people. I know they're students. I want to make sure these threats aren't legitimate, and they don't plan to actually do any of these things. The administration told me, we think you should apologize to the other students because we wouldn't want anybody outside of this school to think that we believe what you believe about abortion. And I was completely taken aback, shocked. This is, somewhere taxpayer-funded university, first of all, but somewhere where we should have diversity of opinion where the school should think of the safety first. And so if these people aren't going to protect us, what's left for us to protect ourselves? And that's something at that point, and still today, we're legally unable to do on campus. So that was my first situation that really made me think about what's going on in the state of Ohio and what's going around the country. I talked on many campuses. I was lucky. I ended up being safe and I wasn't attacked. The next young woman might not be so lucky. And so I think it's very, very important that we continue to push and to rail against these gun-free zones, because it's absolutely horrible how students especially are left on campuses unable to protect themselves. So that was my first situation. Then 2016 comes along, President Trump wins, very exciting. November 28th, 2016, I'm on my way to school, heading to class. I get a call from one of my friends, Kristen, my best friend from law school. She said that I think there's a shooting or a terror attack, there's something going on campus. I said, what? So I'm on my way, I turn around, I go home, I turn on the news, and there was a terror attack, an ISIS-inspired terror attack. I'm sure everybody knows about this one, where many people were injured. The cops were there and ended up shooting the perpetrator, and people were lucky, we had injuries but no deaths. But again, that cop may not have been there in the next situation. And of course, those students would not be able to carry, good guys would not be able to protect themselves from this guy who goes and runs his car into people and starts stabbing people. So I would think, and very similar to what we saw in Dayton last week, if that cop had not been able to respond so quickly, would someone with a concealed carrier, would someone have been able to stop that? In Dayton, maybe. On Ohio State's campus, no. Unless they were breaking the law, no, they wouldn't have been able to stop that. So that was the second thing that made me so passionate about this issue. The third story, some people may have heard this in the news, Reagan hoax. Reagan was a student at Ohio State. It was February, she was going to graduate in May. She was 21 years old, beautiful, smart, hard worker. She was working at a restaurant right off of campus. And every single day, one of her coworkers would walk her to her car, and this was the first time that someone did walk her to her car. And so she's walking, it was 8:30, 9 o'clock, and gets kidnapped, leaving work. She gets raped, robbed, and murdered, leaving Ohio State. This really hit me hard. Since then, I've worked with her family to help push legislation in Ohio. Great people. Their younger daughter actually went to Parkland School in Florida, had just graduated before that attack. And I think so often, would Reagan be with us today if concealed carry had been allowed on that campus? There are so many students, yeah, she was right off of campus, but so many students who work and live near campus. Well, what does Ohio State and these other universities expect them to do? To have concealed carry take their guns off on High Street and pick it back up at the end of the day? I mean, you can't do that. And so she was left unable to defend herself. And so my heart breaks still for that family and for so many others who have been put in similar situations and unable to protect themselves. But on a happier note, let's jump to some media stuff. So how many people in here watch Fox News? How about CNN? Okay, good. So I'm going to fill you in on some of the stuff that goes on when I go on CNN. So as you guys know, media doesn't treat all gun violence the same. They've extensively covered what happened last weekend because it fits into their media sensationalization of guns, right? And you hear, and I debate on Fox and I debate on CNN as well about the Second Amendment. And the thing that always blows my mind the most is that most of the people on the other side of this issue that are debating me have, one, probably never held a gun in their lives, and two, have no freaking clue what they're talking about. None. Sometimes I sit there and I just am floored because I'm not sure quite what to say because they're just pretty much making things up. But one thing I don't even think Fox has covered enough is gun violence in inner cities across this country. And we look at Chicago as a great example. The same weekend as El Paso and Dayton occurred, 59 people were shot in Chicago, 7 of them passed away. One weekend in Chicago. 42 homicides in Chicago in the first 28 days of July alone. 231 shootings in Chicago in July alone. They're not talking about this. And again, keeping in mind that people in Chicago are unable to defend themselves. And so this is a major issue that we need to be drawing attention to. So I was with the president yesterday, and after everything that happened last week, and I know a lot of people, including myself, are very concerned about what the future holds for our rights, and we want to make sure that, to ensure that those are protected. And the one thing that I love about the president, I've known him for six years now, is that he is a great listener. When he's behind closed doors and he's analyzing policy and he's getting ready to take the next steps of what he's going to do, he listens and respects those around him, and he goes to the experts. And so I know on this issue specifically, many people in the administration and in the campaign and around him have voiced their thoughts on how we need to make sure that the Second Amendment is protected, and bringing, of course, attention back to mental health, which is a major issue. You know, in a DUI, who do we blame? We blame the driver in an accident, right? In a bombing, we blame the bomber. When a shooting, we need to blame the shooter. We can't blame the guns.
Right.
And that's something so vitally important that I know has been brought to the president's attention, and that he's going to focus on as we move forward, because I want to make sure those rights are protected. But even more than that, I look forward to 2020, and we have re-election coming up. And one of the reasons for many people that were on the fence about this president in 2016 that they ended up voting for him is our courts. They came over, whether it was on the pro-life issue or the Second Amendment or other issues, but those were two big ones that I heard from people. They came over, they voted for our president in hopes that he would restore great law, constitutional focused, originalist judges to the benches. And he's done that at an unprecedented rate, and this is something I just want to bring to everyone's attention today, some of those numbers. We have over 140 confirmed federal judges since 2017. Of course, 2 Supreme Court justices, who I think are doing a great job. What do you guys think? And very soon, the president spoke yesterday about how we should have over 170 confirmed. So we have 30 more judges in the federal circuits that are going to be confirmed, that are going to be able to bring us proper rulings, because we're seeing a lot of these Ninth Circuit rulings coming out of the Ninth Circuit. They go up to the Supreme Court and they get reversed because they're wrong. A lot of these liberal activist judges kind of read between lines and write what they want into the Constitution, right? And that's simply not how it works. And so we need people that respect the text of the Constitution. So we look forward to 2020, and obviously I know we're very happy about what's happened in our courts, and we want to continue to see that. Potentially, we could fill almost half the court by the end of 2024, which is, I think, very interesting, and would ensure that our rights are protected for generations to come. But I wanted to take a look at the other candidates. We have over 20 on the Democratic side running for president next year. What are their views on the Second Amendment? I've heard Beto talking about mandatory gun confiscation. What do you guys think about that? I think we have 0 fans here. But so I went through and I did some research on each of the candidates, and I wanted to share it with you guys because I think it's so important. So 2 people that I looked at specifically to start were Rep. Tim Ryan from here in Ohio and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Both of them had formerly had A ratings from the NRA. Those are now F. Gillibrand talks about this as a point of pride for her, that her NRA rating has turned to an F. And that is very concerning. The fact that she and so many others don't have any respect for our Constitution, for our rights, it really blows my mind. I mean, even when you look back at the Democratic Party 2-3 decades ago, it was never as bad as it is today. I don't think that we would have imagined seeing the majority of presidential candidates running on socialist policies in the 90s or the 80s for the Democratic Party. And I'll tell you one thing, America will never be a socialist country. So here's some of the other Second Amendment focused issues that I looked at. Do you support a federal assault weapons ban? Every single candidate on the Democratic side said yes, besides Andrew Yang, who had some longer explanation, but I'm sure it will turn to a yes eventually. Most concerning to me, do you want to see DC versus Heller overturned? Booker, O'Rourke, Hickenlooper, Sanders, Williamson, they're on record saying, yes, we want to see this overturned. And now keep in mind, that's not saying the other ones aren't. These other ones just haven't been on record. And I'm sure that many of them in the coming debates will come forward saying, if they're asked, that they would like to see that. Everybody here knows how important that case was, and we cannot afford to have a president who would try to make that happen and to try to reverse the progress that we've seen in the federal courts and the judiciary, and of course with their ability as president with executive orders. Two of the other things I looked at, of course, federal licenses to own a gun, essentially dangerous federal gun registries that they're pushing for. Booker, Buttigieg, Harris, Hickenlooper, Inslee, O'Rourke, Sanders, Warren, Williamson, Yang. Red flag laws, Dave talked about earlier, very dangerous. Every single candidate besides Yang, we're talking about supporting these. Super disappointed, and I think this is something we need as citizens, as constituents, to continue to push our opinions on the state, local, and national level. Besides background checks, the last thing I looked at was the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act from back in 2005. Many people in here remember that. For maybe a few that might not know, this is what shields gun manufacturers and dealers from liability when their products are used to commit crimes. This was actually voted for by Tim Ryan in 2005. And now almost every single candidate, Tim Ryan's on a record, I'm sure he'll say he changed his mind, but they want to say that now that they want to see this repealed. Not good.
Wow.
Not good at all. There's very little common sense when it comes to people who oppose our Second Amendment rights and the protections of that. They don't, like I said before, was saying that the commentators, they don't really know what they're talking about, and they don't have facts to back up their opinions. A lot of them use name calling to avoid having an honest discussion on these facts, because at the end of the day, when we get into debate, the facts, they're behind us, and they're behind the Constitution, and it's really, really disappointing to see. When it comes to background checks, obviously this has been a very, very hot topic over the past week, but for many years before that. And there's been a lot of people that say, you know, we want to see an increase in background checks as a result of these mass shootings. I think we need to be having discussions. I don't think they need to be on background checks. I think the discussions need to be, again, back to mental health. What are we doing as communities? What are we doing as states and localities to put a better and a bigger emphasis on mental health? I don't think much has been done. People have talked about it for a very long time, and nothing has been done to provide people or lead people to the proper support, to receive help. And again, when you look at a lot of the instances like El Paso, like Dayton, there was nothing that has come out that would lead us to believe that background checks would have stopped any of this. Again, bad people do bad things. Criminals are not going to follow the laws, and so we need to find ways to stop them and don't blame the gun, right? Who kills people? People kill people. Guns don't kill people. It's the people that choose to use them in that way. That's who we need to be worried about. We don't need to be worried about our guns. So what can we do? One of the most important things, and I talked earlier about how the president is someone who really listens, and I think there are some people out there that we have elected who are the same way. And so I think it's so vitally important for us to hold each and every one of our elected officials accountable, for us to be voicing our opinions and encouraging those around us to voice our opinions to our elected officials. Remember, they work for us. We don't work for them. And more needs to be done to hold them accountable. And not only to hold them accountable, but we want them fighting for us. We don't just want them with a reliable vote now or then. We don't want them saying, oh, okay, and doing nothing. We want them out there fighting for our rights, fighting for what we need done. We elected them. And so I think it's so important, and I hope that every single person in this room can not only reach out to their state leaders, local leaders, and to the president as well, and voice your opinion on this issue, because I think will really make a difference, but encourage those around you to do the same. I think OFCC's done an incredible job here in Ohio, and I hope that next year every one of you can bring 5 more people to this event, get 5 more people registered. It's a great organization that does incredible work, and I'm really proud to be here today to support Doug and everybody, Chuck, all the hard work they've put in, and if you guys have questions, I'm happy to take them. Just Brian, I guess.
Okay. Well, you mentioned talking to President Trump, and that very much impresses me. But there's a lot of us that are unhappy about what he did with the bump stock ban. I know there's some people who don't care about bump stocks, but I kind of look at this as saying, well, wait a minute. They manufactured over 1 million of this item. One crazy guy does a horrendous act with it, so we got to ban it so nobody else could enjoy these if they wanted to. And then he seems to be pushing for a red flag and universal background checks. And I can tell you pretty much this organization opposes both of those. Is there any way we could get to him and make him understand the gun community? We don't need any more gun laws, any more negative gun laws.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's a couple things on this. In regards to the background checks and the red flag laws, you're not the only group that's concerned. You're not the only people that are concerned, and when it comes to the president, there are a lot of people around him that are concerned about this. Obviously, there's no set policy in front of us for us to critique or analyze or anything like that, but like I said, he's a great listener, and there have been people around him over the past week that have been pushing very hard against this. Actually, you guys are all very familiar with Donald Trump Jr., who is an avid shooter, an avid supporter of the Second Amendment, and he actually went on Fox talking against the red flag laws, and he's very close with his father. I know that he's been talking extensively about this for the past week, and I really don't think that this will ultimately be the conclusion that we see. In terms of reaching out, sorry, I missed that one. In terms of reaching out, so the campaign does monitor the Facebook, but there's also an email account that reaches the campaign and actually gets read, and I can actually get that to Doug, and they can put that in that email that they talked about with some of the other state legislation updates that are going to come out, and I'll put that in there so that you guys have access to that, and I would love to see people send emails. Hey.
So you're saying, when you're face to face with the president, he doesn't only listen, he hears you.
Yes.
I think that carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, it's something that actually was what impressed me about him so much when I first met him. It was before he was running for president. This is a man who's a billionaire. He's extremely busy. He works so hard. He barely sleeps. I mean, I'm so impressed with this guy, but I ran into him. So the reason I originally met the president and his family was he owned the Miss Universe organization when I was in Ohio. So he was in charge and he owned that at the time. I run into him at a conservative event about a year later before he was running for president. And honestly, I didn't even think he'd remember me. I met him once. This guy that meets tons and tons of people every day. He remembered me. He remembered that I was going to law school. He took the time to sit down, give me some advice about law school, about a business I wanted to start at the time, and really, really connected. He's someone that cares about people. He wants to help people. And there's so many moments that people don't see about him, so many things he's done before he ran all the way through when he was running that the media doesn't report. I've been blessed to be able to be there and see him interact with voters behind the scenes, do great things for people, help people out even financially. He doesn't expect the credit or the attention for it. He does it because he cares. He does it from the goodness of his heart. And so I really believe this is a president who's here to serve us, that God put him in this position to help our country. Because I can only imagine what we'd be seeing, not only on the Second Amendment, but on so many of our rights if we had Hillary Clinton elected, or Bernie Sanders elected in 2016. And so I feel very blessed that we have this president to serve us, and I do feel that he's listening. And I think he overall is doing a very, very good job. There's always going to be things that we may disagree on. Not anybody in this country is going to agree 100% on every single thing. But I don't know about you guys. Do you guys think he's doing a good job?
One more quick.
Okay, no problem.
You met him before he was running, probably while he was still a Democrat, but like I used to be. But yeah, DeWine, a Democrat. Has he changed? Do you think he's changed? His core? Nothing has changed?
No.
He's still the same man he was?
Not at all. From when I knew him, when he wasn't running until now, he's the same guy, and he's a good guy. And I think he definitely is frustrated, as he was, and part of why he ran, with the system. Frustrated with what we say, drain the swamp, but it's very, very true. There's so much corruption in the government, starting at the top, and of course we see it in Ohio too. There's still corruption. And so that's frustrating, and it makes it difficult to navigate the waters in DC to get things done. But he's sure done a heck of a lot. I mean, you look at so much that he promised. There's hundreds of things that he promised on the campaign trail that he ultimately delivered on. And that's something that I don't think we've seen the Republican or the Democratic side in a while. maybe one or two things here or there, but he's kept hundreds of those promises, of course, including the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which benefited a lot of people in this country, and I was a big supporter and promoter of that for him.
I'm going to mention that. I don't know how everybody's going to agree with it, so that's why I'm going to say it right now. The president's in a box right now, the do something box. So he's in a political box. We don't want to see him do red flag laws. We don't want to see him make more gun control laws. And we don't want to see him basically do registration for individual transfers of guns. What might be a suggestion to tell him is to have the database, which is underreported by a lot of the states with the problems, mental issues, mental health issues, they don't report it to the database, and things aren't caught because of that in the standard background checks now. So he could go on record as improving the database.
Right, and the other
I don't
thing.
think anybody would object to.
Right, and the other thing that I think people, we've all seen in common with a lot of these situations, when it is a school student, is that there were signs in school level. We see this with the shooter in Dayton, we saw this in Parkland, and the schools kind of dropped the ball to a certain extent on addressing these concerns or referring them to the proper authorities when you are seeing situations with violent students or students with potential kill and rape lists and things like that. And so that's something I think that we can take a look at too, and making sure that schools are equipped to deal with these things, that teachers or administrators have the proper training. And of course, I think very vitally important is arming teachers and those who feel comfortable carrying a weapon while teaching or principals, etc. One person who I'm friends with is Andy Pollock. His daughter Meadow was killed in Parkland. He goes around the country. It's now become his life's mission to go around the country and help arm teachers in schools to protect other students so that they don't end up like his daughter. Because you look at Parkland and there were deputies outside that didn't go in. And these students died. But guess what? There were teachers that weren't armed that used their bodies as shields to protect students. So imagine if that teacher had a gun.
Right.
We could have saved so many lives. And so we need to make sure that we continue on that push as well. And that's something he's doing all across the country, but that we can also be doing in Ohio. I know a lot of ranges have taken it upon themselves to arm teachers for free. I was shooting out at Mock Tactical in Mansfield a week or two ago, and they've done that. I know others have as well, and that's wonderful, and I'm so proud of them for that.
Background checks, just for the sake of background checks. If they want more background checks, an easy way to get it would be to open up the NICS system to citizens. So that if I want to sell you a gun, we don't have to go to a gun store to do a transfer and pay a fee.
Right.
If there was a website where I could log in, you put your information in, and I get an answer, I know I'm selling the gun. That doesn't involve my new laws, it's just a relaxing of regulations. Can you take that to him?
Yeah, absolutely, and as you know, he's been incredible for eliminating regulations, and we've seen an incredible amount of over-regulation. An interesting fact on that actually is that when Obama left office, we had a record high of close to 100,000 pages of regulations in the Federal Register. Within the first year of Trump being in office, we cut that down to 62,000, and we're still cutting. There's a lot that still need cut, but I know the focus is still on it. For every one new, they cut 22, and that's really good.
Another interesting fact is that under Obama, we got to carry in national parks, and under President Trump, all we've done is lost bump stocks. That's a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, no, and as I said before to Brian, there are people that are very disappointed with that across the country, but overall I think he has had a great record, and this is stuff that we need to continue to voice to him and to others, that we disagree with decisions, because we're not going to always be 100% on the same page, but we need to continue to voice that and to make sure that we express to the president, to the administration, to our local and state elected officials that this is important and this needs to be fixed. This is what we want done as supporters of the Second Amendment.
I give him high marks on most everything, but I'm disappointed as far as our gun rights go.
Thank you
Somebody
guys.
else say something.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. And I consider